Hello and welcome back to what you need to know for ProPresenter operators. In this video, we're going to talk about a very big idea in ProPresenter, and that is macros. So we can see macros exist in ProPresenter down here in this bottom right corner. There are several things that can be down here, but if you click on the macro icon all the way over here, then that will bring up the macros. We can have different groups of macros called macro collections, and we have several collections of macros that we use for several different things. We have macros for our screens, macros for our lights. We have macros that control the Ableton computer and can start and stop playback of multitracks. We have 6 possible songs that we can program lights for and have them triggered by ProPresenter. First of all, we're getting a little bit ahead of ourselves. We need to talk about what is a macro first and foremost. A macro is a button. It's a digital button, and you can tell that digital button to do lots of different things all at once. So for instance, our service screens macros are macros that are triggering multiple different things at once to change and reconfigure how our screens look in the room, in the confidence monitor, and in the live stream. And all of those screens look a little bit different. In order for us to best see how all of these things work, we need to adjust how we are viewing ProPresenter here. First, what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring this down here, and I'm going to go over here to our preview window where it says alpha key right here. This screen is what we are previewing in ProPresenter, but we can preview multiple different things at once. So I'm going to click on this menu right here, and I can select any of our screens that I want to preview here. I can preview what's going to show on the main screen right here. I can preview what's going to show on the confidence monitor right here. I can preview what's going to show on the live stream, which is this alpha key right here. I want to be able to see all of our screens all at once. I'm going to leave this as alpha key. So this is going to preview our live stream, or at least it's going to preview what ProPresenter is sending to the live stream, because we can't see the cameras in this preview because ProPresenter is not inputting camera feeds. It can do that, and we have a little layer down here where we can have a video input from a camera. But I'm going to go down here to a new windowed output. I want to see what happens on the main screen, and I want to see the confidence monitor right there. So I'm going to resize these windows so that they fit. Now I'm going to move these apart from each other. If I click on our pre-post service loop, we can see that we are seeing what's happening on the main screen. We have a center screen and 2 wings, which are, about 5 feet out from the center screen. And we've got our confidence monitor. So currently in our pre and post service loop, all of our screens are set using this macro to receive these graphics. So let's just leave it on the loop as we go through the macros, and we'll just see how they all change, what the screens look like in different ways. If we right click on this slide, we can see that it's got a macro on it called the announcements, and that announcements macro is in our service screens group of macros. We can scroll down and we can see we've got an announcements macro right here. Let's go ahead and take this macro off of here. Right click on the slide, edit action, remove action announcements. That's going to remove that macro from that slide. And why don't I make this even shorter? Let's make it 1 second. So these are going to go through much quicker now. So the announcements macro, it has configured our main screen, it has configured our confidence monitor, and it has configured our live stream all at once. Let's go to this macro right here. It's called announcements fill. Now, the only difference with this announcements macro is as I click on it, you'll see that it spreads that announcement graphic across all 3 of the screens in the main room. Was just in the center on this announcements macro. Now it's going to take this and it's going to stretch it across all 3 of our screens, the center and the wings, when we use this announcements fill. And it is doing that through something called a prop. Props are another topic, although we'll touch on them in this video because they are relevant, of course. But there are several things at work here. We have the prop, which is this little 3 stacks of paper looking icon right here. We have the one to the left of it, that is the audience look. We have the one to the right of it, that is the stage look. So the audience look is essentially what is configuring our live stream and our main wall output. And the stage is what is configuring the confidence monitor. I'm going to go ahead and slow this back down again because this is a little bit hard to look at with these going by so fast. So let's take a look at a different macro and see what it does. Well, we've got these lower third macros right here, and we use these during the sermon. We have sermon graphics. We can trigger those to turn on or off from ProPresenter. So if we trigger it off, notice how it suddenly changes both our live stream and our confidence monitor screens. The confidence monitor is set to copy the live stream, and that's how it's set in the announcements macros. Since these lower third macros don't change the stage direction, it's not going to change what the confidence monitor does. So the confidence monitor is still copying the live stream. However, the live stream has changed because the audience look changes on these lower third macros here. So the audience look changed to remove graphics from the live stream. Since they were removed from the live stream, they were also removed from the confidence monitor. Now we can use this lower third on macro, and of course that brings up the lower third for the message. We don't use this lower third macro for anything but the message, so that is what is triggered there. And again, that is through audience looks, which again is another topic for another video. We're just seeing how the macros are working right now. Let's go ahead and select a message macro. And again, this is just our pre and post service loop that we're going through, but we can see a lot of different things changing as we change through these macros. The message macro is again changing the audience look and the stage look, and it's also changing that prop that we mentioned a little bit ago. So the audience look has added these graphics onto the sidewalls, and those are ocean graphics that match, if we trigger our lower third, that match the lower third on the live stream and also match what is supposed to be on the center screen during the message. It's also a big ocean graphic. All of that information is not contained within these slides that are looping, or even contained within the slides of the sermon. And we can just go down to it real quick. The slides in the sermon section only have the center image and the text and all that stuff. That's the only stuff that is contained here in these slides. Everything that is in these sidewalls is contained within the macro. The lower third is triggered by the macro, but the text is sent from the main slide. And the same kind of goes for the confidence monitor. The text is being sent there from the slide, but the look is being triggered by the macro. And we can select this message without sidewalls macro. The only thing that changes is that it turns off the sidewalls. And of course, this is triggering also our lower thirds on and off. So that's why we have these extra macros for lower thirds here. Anyway, let's go back to our pre and post service loop and select that to keep going. Now we just came here and we selected our pre and post service loop, but this message macro is still active. So we still have that lower third there, which comes from the macro. We still have our confidence monitor set by the macro, and we still have these sidewalls, which were set by the macro. For each section of the service, it all depends on having the correct macro. Since this is announcement slides, we use an announcements macro, and that sets all of our screens to look the way that they should for this section of the service. We have a couple other macros that we can look at. We have some worship macros. The one that we usually are always using is this worship remap, and of course that changes how all of our screens are behaving in different ways yet again. Maybe most notably is that it is making these sidewalls behave very differently. It's taking that center image and it's copying and pasting it to those side walls, and it looks pretty terrible. It doesn't look very good, and that's partially because it's the wrong macro for this pre and post service loop. Again, we're just looking at what the macros do. We don't really care about anything else right now. So if we go to a song, we can see that it's still doing the same exact thing. It's taking that graphic in the center and it's copying and pasting it to the outside screens. And that is exactly the look that we want in the room. These side screens, they're about 5 feet out away from the center wall. And in the room, it looks awesome and gives lots of movement across, especially since this is a moving graphic. We go to this next one right here. We can see it's also a moving graphic and has the same effect. It's got lots of big movement with lights that is also being triggered by macros. We'll get to the lighting macros in just a second. But with everything combined with the lights and the screens and the music, especially, all of these things work together to make a complete worship set. So again, let's go back to our pre and post service loop and select it. And yeah, we'll see what these worship macros are doing. They are, again, changing the audience look, changing the prop, and changing the stage look. So the stage look here has a different layout. It's very similar to what the message layout is for the confidence monitor. These worship ones are set to have current lyrics on the top and then the upcoming lyrics on the bottom down here. And up at the top, if I remove my mouse, you can see this little coming up icon right here. And next to that, it will show the section of the song that's coming up. So if you're on the first verse, it's going to tell you that we're on the first verse on the left side over here. Coming up is going to be the first chorus. So let's go back to our song and we'll select a song. We see the current is the intro, coming up is a vamp, and that's exactly what slide is coming up here. Now that we're on the vamp, It says currently we're on the vamp, and coming up is verse 1, and you can see those lyrics, the very first verse, and coming up is a chorus. So we're going through the verse lyrics here, and here we are on the final slide of the verse, and then we're going to go to the chorus, and then it changes to chorus, and coming up after the chorus is another vamp, and then after the vamp is another verse, and so on and so forth. You can see how that is working. Everything looks perfect because we're using the correct macro. We can change to a worship fill. That looks fine too. It stretches that center image across all 3 screens, and it also stretched out and made the lyrics much bigger. See how much of a difference that makes between these 2 macros on that center screen. We could also go to worship with no sidewalls, which is the same as this remap, but without the sidewalls. But let's go to a macro that does not match the worship times. Let's just go to this message macro right here that brings up the message graphic, which is not what we want. We don't want this graphic to be there for the lyrics. And again, in the confidence monitor, it changed the layout of these lyrics, and now they are left aligned instead of center aligned like we want them to be. Benefit of these center aligned in the worship macros is that it is mirroring exactly what we see on the live stream and on the main screens. As we go through the lyrics, everything matches exactly, and that just helps the band and helps the singers lead the songs more effectively. But all of that gets kind of ruined if we are using the wrong macro. Having the wrong macro can lead to disaster. Not to mention that it's not serving the live stream. Having this big graphic on here when really the live stream needs to be seeing just the lyrics and the cameras also. So without going super deep, you can just see how powerful each of them are. The way that they're named helps it be really easy to see which part of the service each macro is supposed to be used in. The announcements macro is 4 times of announcements. I'm just going to go ahead and take this macro and drop it onto that. And now when we select the slide, it automatically triggers that macro, and all of the screens look the way that they do. The countdown video, it's also an announcement, so it's got an announcement macro on it. Same thing goes for if we go up to our worship macros again. You can see these worship macros. Here is that worship macro right there, worship remap. It is on the very first slide of a song, so that when the ProPresenter operator selects that slide, it triggers the macro and sets all of the screens to look exactly the way that they need to. Changing macros is as simple as going to a slide with a macro on it, edit the macro that you want to change or remove. Here I can change it to the announcements fill, and I can select that now and it will change. If the announcements fill macro is not what we want, if we actually do want the standard announcements macro, then we select it again. And notice how it didn't change anything on the screens yet. Nothing will change until you activate the macro. And since the macro is on the slide right here, we can click the slide right here, or we can go to the macro window over here and select the macro that we want. That will also work. The message macros set the screens the way the message needs to look, and the song macros set the screens the way that a song needs to look, and the announcements macros set the screens the way that the announcements need to look. It's as simple as that. The other kind of macro that we are using a lot is lighting macros. We can go to our service lights collection of macros here. These are spread throughout the service as well. So here we can see, here's one of those purple lighting macros right here on the countdown. It's the countdown lighting macro. So we have a specific lighting look that matches the countdown video. When the lighting computer is connected to ProPresenter, when you select this countdown video, it plays the video, it plays the audio, and the audio comes out of the soundboard, and it triggers the lights using this lighting macro. That sends a command to the lighting computer through the network to change the lights, just to let people know that something is changing, and that just lets everybody know that the service is about to start. Where lighting macros really become important is in the songs. If we right click on this very first slide in the worship set, we have a macro here, song 1:1, and that is in the collection song 1 lights. We have 10. All of those macros send a lighting change command to the lighting computer. The lighting operator is going to program these lights to look appropriate. ProPresenter is just sending the command. But it is important to know these lighting macros are there. We're going to dig into future videos about how all of these macros are exactly working. For right now, this is just a PSA. That is how we are using macros in our church for our church services right now.